how do we diagnose and fix a sudden drop in organic traffic for a website? Can we recover in 1 to 2 months? Can you recommend any tools or any websites to identify the main reasons for the drop? David or Natalia, do you have any thoughts?
I'd say first thing, as with any sudden changes, don't panic. Dive into the data, try and get a sense of what's happening. There's some great articles. Whenever I hear this, I always think of Alida Solis, who has written some great stuff about this. I think one of her blog posts shows up every time somebody looks for this. But yeah, I have a look and try and find what the cause is, look through the data, don't make any rash decisions, and try and see what's coming out of there. Sometimes I've had instances where traffic drops have just been a fundamental change in what people were looking for. There were certain terms, topics that were highly popular, and the drop in those was significant to set off a few alerts.
Great. Natalia, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very good response. I'm just going to say to be maybe more proactive about the tools and just go to Search Console and you'll have all the answers. Because remember, it's not website dropping, it's pages. Because Google ranks pages. So find out what has actually dropped. And you might actually find there is a pattern, there's a template type that dropped because maybe you've made a change. Maybe there's a particular keyword query or a group of queries that are specifically affected. And that should give you a lot to analyze. So identify first what has dropped.
And also competitor activity is also one. Suddenly a competitor gets a new digital team or hires an exceptional consultant like Simon Cox. And before you know it, they start really appearing high up in those rankings. You start dropping down, and that does have an impact on your traffic.
He's back. We've got Sean back. Let me just put you back to the call. Sean, you missed the question, but the question basically is, how would you diagnose a sudden drop in organic traffic for a website? And is it possible to recover in 1 to 2 months? Whilst you think about that, I won't put you on the spot. I'll give my thoughts. David and Natalia have just given theirs. For what it's worth, Kaylee on my team did a blog post on exactly this. Sorry, I don't usually do the whole self-promotional thing, but there you go. There's a whole thing on this, and it covers it ranging from actually, was there a traffic drop or is it an issue with tracking and analytics, going through to has there been a shift in search intent for what you do? I know during COVID, lots of businesses.
Seasonality, which I think is also very undervalued impact on your traffic. I actually have a fun one to share. I had that a couple of years ago when I was working for this client that sells boilers. And they came to me and they were like, we have a traffic drop year on year. Why October is not seeing the same traffic figures? And it's because September that year has been way colder. So the traffic has happened earlier. So when you compare year on year, you think there's a drop. When you compare 3-month period, they were actually up, just different periods of time because the cold affects the boiler purchasing decisions. So seasonality often is one of the unexpected answers as well, if you haven't found anything else, obviously.
I think also just checking with your marketing or IT team to see if there's been any major changes recently.
I had one where I was asked to investigate, and it was simply that they put in the cookie consent and it had blocked it. And that was the reason why in analytics it was showing it was actually about an 80% drop in traffic.
Yeah, I've had that exact same issue. That's where Google Search Console is obviously really good because it's different data. So it gets it from the search results. So it's quite helpful to be able to compare analytics and Search Console data. We also had it where a client had basically released a new version of the staging site essentially, and the devs didn't take off the no index tags and things like that. If there are loads of crawling tools like Screaming Frog and so on that can pick up these things pretty quickly. But yeah, that post's really good. Sean, what about, oh, there you go. David's got the Screaming Frog t-shirt on there. Not enough people throw t-shirts and stuff at me. I was saying, these guys got 15 pairs of socks this year from different things. I haven't even got one. What's going on?
I shouldn't say. I've got about 10 Google t-shirts and Google bags and Google notepads and pens. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Sean, what about you? What about you? If in terms of diagnosing a traffic drop, any additional thoughts to what we said?
Sure. Yeah, I think first of all, it's been said already, but initially you have to find if there is actually a problem. This is why forecasting and looking at historical data actually helps, because you understand these yearly trends and patterns. And also, a big thing we do at Macmillan is annotate, making sure that we understand internally and externally anything that could potentially factor in the change of traffic. Say there's new content being created, or campaigns going live, or campaigns that ended, or paid campaign, less spend on certain campaigns. External factors, obviously, it could be a massive pandemic, it could be an election, or, for example, at Macmillan, obviously with the King getting cancer recently, that we had a massive spike in traffic for obvious reasons, and that was nothing we really did. And then also, funny one is, I used to work for a refurbished phone company, and when it rained, we actually saw better sales. When it was really sunny, everyone was about, they weren't really buying phones online, so we actually were praying for rain sometimes. There's those things. And then also, looking at, as you say, using tools and making sure, obviously looking at competition in the market. If you do see a drop in traffic, but if all your competition are also seeing drops and the market is generally, then obviously there's nothing much wrong with what you're doing. And also looking at if you've been penalized by Google for anything, like technical issues and that kind of thing. Just to identify those kind of so on. So it could be a mix of anything, but it's generally, first of all, you have to find there is actually an issue. A lot of times the alarm bells go off, and actually it's a seasonal thing, or there's something in the news, or it could be a bit like we had, again, I'll go to the phone company, but we had, if anyone remembers, I don't know if it's still going actually, but the website Hot Deals, and someone had posted about
microphone again, Sean.
So on
Hot
the
deals we're talking about.
Yeah, and it just went off, and we started selling all this one particular iPhone, and we didn't have enough to sell, so we had to cut that particular sale, and that was just because of a bit of press. So you have to keep an eye on these things.
Yeah. When you were talking about the weather, it reminded me of when I used to work for a company that does corporate events. And the same thing, if the sunshine was out, people were not searching to plan a corporate event. They were probably out in the sunshine enjoying a nice long boozy lunch or something like that. When I realized there was that connection, we used to send out emails to London-based businesses where we'd say, the sun's out, we're going to buy the whole office ice creams. And so we used to go get our sales team delivering ice creams to people, just because we could see it was really quiet during those periods. Just to pick up on what you said about paid media, actually, I think that's one thing that I've noticed when people say we've seen a huge drop in organic traffic. And then I've noticed the paid media team have turned on branded searches, and therefore that same traffic has just moved to paid instead. They haven't spent a lot of money on it, but it just helps them realize. So you made me think of that when that was the case.